right, here we are with Mr. David, Blood Smoking Glory, the one and only, the beast of the of America.
Beast of NA East.
Yes, sir. All right. First of all, let's start with a brief introduction. Just tell us who you are, what you like to do, anything you want.
So I'm just an 11K Pause 1 player. I played a bunch of qualifiers, played a couple different leagues like Boris Invitational, NADCL, Chronicles League, if anyone remembers that. And then I also just recently played in the AD World Cup tournament, and we got second in that. Barely lost the Russians, but that was a pretty cool new experience as well, playing Pause 1 in Ability Draft.
All right, cool. Okay, my first question of the day is gonna be: what are the best carries of the patch for you?
My best carries right now would probably be Nature's Prophet, Shadow Fiend, Tinker, Tiny, and Terrorblade. The Tinker is pretty niche. I also took Huskar off this because I don't think that's that viable anymore, although I used to like to try to run that pause one. But my most consistent are definitely the Natures and Tinker.
Okay, and you would say this is the same order that you would pick him, if you had the chance to?
Yeah, you can throw Drow in between Shadow Fiend and Tinker as well.
Right, like
Yeah.
that? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it seems pretty. It actually looks pretty different to what most people have given me, but it does have some heroes like NPSF and Trout that everybody's talking about. I think you're the second person only that's told me Tiny. Even though that hero was super busted, I do believe like it's still pretty decent. And then the TV, which only Dark Lord talk about, and I do believe the hero is pretty good. I feel the hero just being that fast in this meta, it's very important. That's why Luna, I feel like, also has a lot of viability in this patch, right?
Yeah. I think having a carry that farms really fast is pretty nice. But I've always had like a pretty like niche hero pool as well. Because before I've played like a ton of Huskar, a ton of Meepo. Obviously Tinker Pause 1 is probably pretty uncommon for most people. I only know like a couple other people who do that. So yeah, I'm not surprised my heroes are a little bit different.
Okay. Would you say you have anything that you're that you have that makes you special with Tinker, or that actually, or what's basically something that you like from Tinker that other heroes don't offer you?
I think it's really I think if people played it more on Pause 1, people might get a little bit more used to having it on their team, because the biggest gripe that people always have on Tinker is that it takes up so much of the map. And whenever you have like a mid laner who's playing Tinker and a hard carry, it can be really annoying to try to like farm for any core. And Tinker is usually dependent on your other two cores because you usually want to have someone do physical damage. But the amount of damage that you have on Tinker can just carry games, because even whenever people hit their timings on whatever they want to hit, you can always out itemize it on Tinker. And the amount of like oppressive like map presence that you have, where if you start rolling through the game's like almost over. Like just shut down the enemy team right away, because you can portal anywhere on the whole map, and you can almost burst anyone in under 5 seconds flat. Especially if you have a Change Sun, like a Lion or like an Earth Speed or something like that, you can just burst anybody that you see on the map in 2 seconds flat, and then go right back to farming like the safest spot on the map. So I think, especially with how big the map is, you can take up all the dead farm that no one else would ever get, while also like sucking in a crazy amount of farm.
Okay. All right. And I do have to ask, what are some stuff that the range heroes have in common when it comes to the lane and in game in general that you like from them? Because we see everybody here is a range. We would argue TV isn't, and Tiny is not even melee. So
I would say the reason I have them rated in 1, 2, 3 for Nature's Drow or Nature's Shadow Fiend and Drow is pretty much their lane strength. So I think a lot of times in pubs, if you're not stomping your lane or at least coming out winning, it's going to be hard to climb rank, I think, because once you hit a certain point, you pretty much have to win your lane every single game to then snowball the game, or at least not be the weight for your team to pretty much carry. Even though you are the hard carry and you're supposed to, have a lot of time, it's just not how, all games go. Obviously, like you're gonna have some good games, bad games. I rate Nature's Prophet number one, just because the power of the Treants early game to take towers on the map is so critical. Because I think right now in the meta, you'll have, if it's not like a balanced game, it's just going to be like a stomp one on one side or the other. And being able to take towers, tier one towers, is what gets you back into the game whenever you lose like 2 or 3 of your lanes. Whenever you have no business coming back into the lane because you're able to split push towers down just by suiciding treants in there. Or if your lane is like horrible, it is not uncommon for me to literally just abandon my lane bottom or top at level 4, keep it to the enemy safe lane, and just force take their tier 1 tower. And I'll just like tell all supports in my offlaner, like, guys, we're 4-manning this tower at minute 6. I don't give a fuck. Like, I can't play bottom, so I'm either going to go jungle or I'm just going to force the issue on the enemy team. Usually that works. If it doesn't, then all right, fuck it. Then you're just going to go back to jungle your own little safe lane, you know, camps next to your tier 2 and be sad. But most of the time, it actually does end up working out, in my experience.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to defend a T1 tower when you put 4 heroes and trends on top of it, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of bleeds into my general playstyle. I always like heroes that have a lot of map presence. Like
Okay.
Tinker, Meepo, and Nature's Prophet are like probably my 3, because you can literally just get anywhere on the map in like a split second pretty much.
Okay. All right. So if you're doing well in the lane, what do you try to do? What is your game plan for the first 15 minutes of the game?
If I'm doing really well in lane, I'll almost always try to portal and take the enemy team's safe lane tower. Because once you start taking these towers, they usually start falling like Jenga blocks if you're ahead. And even if not, it's super, super powerful to be able to take tier 1 towers early. Because it opens up the map, it makes their enemy cores farm in way worse spots where they get way less farm. And then of course, after you take their safe lane tower, you usually want to go push mid at the next chance you get with either a power rune on your mid or just off of a good kill, try to take their mid tower. And then if you really can, it's not that important to then go back and take your safe lane's tower or their off lane's tower pretty much.
Yeah. What do you think it is? Why do you think it is that most of the times we don't see safe lane carries actually trying to take that tower?
I think whenever you have really balanced games, it's very tough to commit to taking a tower without dying. So you don't probably see it as much in, I would assume, pro matches or more balanced games. But whenever you're doing really well, um, at least Shadow Fiend and Natures, you can just snowball the game just by how much damage or how much tower damage you have early.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's also kind of like the hardest tower to take and it also doesn't give you anything. It doesn't really give you access to the triangle. Doesn't really give you access to the wisdom. You're still close to a T2. You can't really commit in there like you would like to if you are taking those objectives, right?
Yeah, I would only take that tower last. Like whenever I'm saying safe lane, I'm saying their safe lane tower is number 1. So pretty much your off lane's tower. And then their mid tower is second, and then the tower that you're against in the safe lane, that's the last priority, I would say.
Yeah, that's what there's so many games that go like 30 plus minutes and the tower is still probably standing, even though you won your lane. It's because nobody really cares about it. It doesn't give you an objective nearby. It's just a little bit more gold, but unless you're like stomping hard your lane, you're never gonna see that tower taken before minute 15 to 20. All right.
Yeah.
So the next question I got for you is: at what minute do you focus on objectives? And for objectives, I'm talking about Tormentor, Russian, tier 2s, anything like that.
This is actually pretty good because whenever I coach people in the past, at least for hard carries, I almost always tell them to like literally after minute 14, I would say, or even just after lane, the game becomes like extremely, extremely simple for hard carries most of the time. In my mind, it's like if you want to ensure the most consistent games possible, every single game after the laning phase is over, unless your team's going to take some tier 1 tower, but assuming it's just like a balanced game where, maybe 1 or 2 towers fall, the next tormentor for you should just be tormentor. Or pretty much tormentor isn't like #1 objective. If you can swing it, if your team is strong enough, the most optimal strategy is almost always to go take Roche at 19 minutes and then go right into tormentor at 20. And then you literally just will AFK it up until your team wants to go push a tier 2 tower. And then you go with your whole team. But until then, you don't do any Mickey Mouse fights. You don't go run around to dead spots on the map. You literally just farm it up, and you will always be in a good spot in the game. And you'll always have pretty much a chance to carry the game.
Okay. Yeah, basically start snowballing. If you have Rush and Torm, you're most likely snowballing the game pretty fast. All right.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is in between the two, because normally you'll never end on the first Roche, but the biggest thing that hard carries always buy into is they start going on these like random, like I call it TikTok, pretty much TikTok mindset, like smoke plays, where people just get bored, especially supports, and they're like, all right, let me just go hit a smoke. Let's go smoke and try to kill somebody. But unless you're trying to kill somebody to then go take an objective, there's no point that you should be. There's no point for you to be taking part in that smoke. Just go let your team play that shit. If they kill them, great, but it's probably not going to accomplish that much anyways. And if they don't, who cares? At least you don't feed with them.
Yep.
But the #1 thing that you should always be doing on carries is farming, unless you're walking directly to an objective or to like go smoke into a team fight into an objective.
Okay. I've seen a lot of carries that they take ages, minute 15, 16, and they feel like they're immortal. And then they just feed away their advantage by trying to push a T2 really early, or by trying to do some Mickey Mouse fight, like you were saying, making a smoke play into their triangle for no reason at all. And it usually costs them so big that the enemy team usually can make a comeback from it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
people always try to do that, especially on these range carries. Before you have Pike, like I don't care if you have Aegis or not, you can die so quickly, like twice. I don't
Yes,
know.
sir. All right. So for you, this is personal opinion, preferred opinion. Between Tormentor or Roshan, if you have to choose one of the other goes to the enemy. Which one would you take at 20-minute mark?
Oh, definitely Roshan, but I don't know. I played a lot of different ranks through all sorts of different brackets, and I think if you're always at Tormentor at 20 minutes, you're always going to get it uncontested. And most of the time, you won't even ever have to make that trade.
Okay.
Because the problem with taking Roshan is, especially if it's not on your side, they can take Tormentor and then contest right away if they're fast enough. Now, if it's on your side, then it's pretty much impossible for them to contest. But most of the time, you can still get on over there unless the other team is also sitting in Roshan and hitting it the second it walks in. Because
Yeah,
technically,
it takes a while.
you're
Yeah.
taking Tormentor at 20, they can't start taking Roshan until 2030. So you're always going to have the advantage going for the Torm.
Okay. All right. Now just talk to me about what farming patterns usually work out for you.
So normally for safe lane, you always want to be pretty much pulling the small camp every single wave that you can. If the off lane's contesting you, you pretty much want to pull their wave into the big camp and kill it there. Walk back, take your 2 small camps or like small medium camps behind the tower, and then you pretty much come collect your next wave that hits your tower. And if you're doing this properly, you're going to be farming 2 waves every single minute and hopefully 4 camps every minute. And that's like pretty optimal across all carries, ranged or not, for a pause 1 player to do, to like min-max the map.
Okay. All right. And I've seen this a lot because we've played so many times against each other, playing carry to carry. Even though I'm not a carry player, I used to play I remember the Beastmaster versus Gyro specifically twice in a row, and the same result. I was stomping the early mid game, then you just make a comeback on Gyro. So I did saw those farming patterns in place, right? I also want to talk to you about warding as a carry. Is it something you usually do? If you do, where do you place them and when?
Yeah, so normally if I'm scared in lane, I'll buy a ward sentry and put on my portal if I'm scared that they're gonna like teleport and gank me. So pretty much like Undying, Tusk, Wind Ranger, Treant, like stuff like that, where they always want to just hop through the portal and kill you. I will almost always put one there because there's nothing more tilting as a safe laner whenever you fight somebody, like especially like the Lotus, and then you have like a double wave come into your tower, and then a pause for ganks and kills you, and then you lose a double wave, and you're like, oh
Yeah.
my game is over. It's all done. So I hate that early, so I always try to ward that. If I have a free lane where I'm like just like farming my safe lane without getting booted out, I'll try to put a ward that shows pretty much their tier 1 tower, so I know if a support's gonna TP and gank me. And then eventually, whenever I get over to my triangle, I almost always sentry ward my own triangle. Because if you put the ward next to the trees, next to the pretty much the shrine or whatever,
Mhm.
you can pretty much cover 90% of the most common wards that's gonna be put in your triangle. So you just buy the one sentry, and then you put the ward where it views the river, so you can always see if someone's coming up to gank you.
Okay. All right. And now, when you're playing against the annoying heroes, against the Nyx assassins, the bounty hunters, or Rikimarus, what do you usually do? What's your mindset in the game? How do you overcome having that hero against you?
Usually, I'm always asking for people to stay behind me, or at least like one support. And whenever you're like farming on the map, and this is just like after you're done with your lane and all this, I just think about my normal farming pattern, and then I just try to subtract one camp from that.
Okay.
So let's say if you're on Radiant and your tier 1 tower's gone, and you're gonna go farm up that lane. Normally, if you're semi-confident that you can farm the lane past the river, that's like kind of in between your tier 1 and tier 2 tower, you'll then go back down and take the little water creeps
Okay.
next, that's like close to your tier 1 tower. Instead of going for that camp, I'll just go directly back, check my watcher. I always take watchers. I think that's also something that people should always do whenever they walk past a watcher. Take those watchers, and then I'll go back and farm safely. And then vice versa on the other side, like if I'm gonna go farm on the other enemy side, instead of taking like their small camp next to your tier 1 tower, I'll just hit the big camp, or even sometimes I won't even hit that, and I'll just go run right back to my triangle and my 2 camps next to my tier 2. And I think it's kind of easy to think about it that way, where you just pretty much subtract one, because that way you're always just going to be slightly ahead of their supports normally.
That's actually pretty cool. Nobody has told me that, like, mentality where you just, okay, I know I'm playing against these annoying heroes. I'm just gonna farm one less camp, and that'll be it. And sometimes that does make a big difference, because even if they do get to you, these heroes usually don't kill you on their own, so they still have to. Somebody else has to come with them. So most of the times, the second hero is the one that's not going to be in time, even if they do start on you, and then you can probably TP out or kill them and then TP out. You know.
Well, exactly, because the reason I say the -1 too, because kind of like what you're saying, where they always need a second hero to get there, and those farming patterns that you're used to playing with, that's whenever you're assuming that the supports are doing what most other supports do. So like, let's say you're playing against a Phoenix or Coddle or I don't know, whatever these boring supports are, they're going to be normally farming or like playing near their cores. But whenever you have these invis heroes, they're going to be lurking and like running around the map trying to catch people. So by subtracting that one camp, it not only does it make you play a little bit safer, but also makes it harder for their second teammate to get there, because you're going to be like one camp closer to your team.
Yep.
So it's going to take one camp more for them to get to you, and one camp easier for your team to get to you. So I don't know. That's just the way I rationalize it.
Yeah, those
Try to
5-7
figure it out in
extra
my mind.
seconds can always come out handy. All
Oh
right.
yeah.
All right. The next question I have for you is what your favorite item is.
Dude, this has been Nullifier, I think, since Nullifier has come out. I think Nullifier is like such a slept on item. It's crazy because, especially if you're a Pause 1 player, everyone knows the feeling nowadays with how rich these supports get, where they have a Ghost Scepter, they have a Glimmer Cape, they have a Force Staff, they have a Yules, and you can literally spend like half the team fight running around chasing some little support that's ducking in and out of the trees, using all their items on you, and you're just sitting there sad as hell with 0 kills, 0 damage done, and your whole team's not gonna flame you because they're like, what the hell is my carry doing that team fight? And I think late game, having a nullifier whenever these supports get super rich, it makes it super easy just to burst one person and then go to the next one.
Okay. All right. I think you're the first person that told me nullifier. Most people have been saying Manta, or some people said BKB. Some people say Blink. It just depends, but nobody's told me nullifier though, and I like the reasoning why. Now on Manta versus BKB, which one is your preferred item usually?
So Manta, I think you have to get if you're against like silences, or if you're going to be against like roots. So like tree and protector, you're always going to want to get one against it. If they build like an orchid, I don't think BKB is the answer to an orchid. You have to get a Manta, because you can't afford to like pop your BKB to pretty much dispel the orchid if you have to, because like you commit way too much in the fight.
Yeah.
Because like then once like if they can just pop your BKB with one silence, you can't fight until your next BKB, so you're cooked. And then generally, like if you're against these blade mill buyers, like these dom breakers or sometimes centaur and stuff like this, I think you just have to get a BKB. So that way, whenever it's your turn to hit somebody, you're actually killing them whether or not they press their blade mill or not. And most of the time nowadays, it does feel like you kind of get like a Manta and a BKB, but I don't know. I always just look at it as if they have hard stuns, you just have to get the BKB or the blade mill. But I'm not a huge BKB fan either. I usually try to find the angle where I don't have to buy one if I can.
Exactly.
You know?
Okay, so between Manta and BKB, you would say Manta?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. It's also like 3 times as least, I mean, the less cooldown, so the cooldown on BKB is insane. It's what, 95?
Yeah, well, and you can farm with Manta, you can bait with Manta, you can do a lot of like Mickey Mouse stuff with Manta as well, and BKB is just pretty much, I don't know, it's just BKB.
Yeah, you just press it when you want to take a big fight and you know there's a lot of shade in the ground, stunts and bullshit. All right.
Exactly.
All right. The last but not least is the question of what's your favorite hero in Dota 2?
Hands down, it's got to be Tinker. And while we're talking about Manta versus BKB, Tinker BKB is absolutely absurd, because you get it down to like a 30-second cooldown, which is insane right now in this game, especially since they just removed the refresher BKB. And I think having all of your items on like 0-second cooldowns is like absurdly broken in most cases. Because even now that they've changed the BKB Ghost Scepter mechanic, where you can't like just go invincible whenever you want, you can still BKB and Wind Waker away, which is pretty much the same thing. And especially on Tinker, if you can pretty much wait for like one projectile to hit you, and you wait like a quarter of a second before you hit Yules, you can almost always blink out of Yules. Like it's like if you know how to use the Yules blink mechanic,
the 2.5 second.
Really, really abusable.
Yeah. The 2.5 second invulnerability. Yeah, no, I totally get that, because I've done that too on several heroes. Well, okay, man. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for doing the interview here. I think that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for being here.